everyone, welcome back to week number 3 of the Wonky Piecing and Easy Applique Quilt-Along. This week is all about quilting your background fabric. So you'll need to gather whatever your background fabric will be, about a fat quarter size, which is 18 by 21 inches. Also gather a scrap piece of batting about the same size, and if you know you're going to make a wall hanging instead of a pillow, you could actually get some backing fabric as well about the same size. You're going to sandwich that all together using fusible spray such as this, or you can safety pin all 3 layers together, and you'll want to put the batting in between the background fabric, of course, and the backing fabric. Once you have that done, you're ready to go, and you just need to decide what kind of quilting pattern you'd like to do on the background fabric. The most basic one to do is something like this, which is kind of a grid fashion. So I just drew lines on my background fabric about 3 inches apart, set my machine to a decorative stitch, which is a little serpentine stitch, and put some variegated thread in, and just went to town and followed the lines I had drawn. But I want to show you 3 of my favorite quilting patterns that I do a lot for these kind of quilts and for small wall hangings. And I'll go into more detail about how to do these in a moment. The first one is this wonky straight stitch quilting, which I do a lot for my mini mod dogs. The second is curvaceous quilting. And the third and last one I'm going to show you today is what I call this Wonky Chevron. So let's get started, and I'll show you the first pattern. So the first one I want to show you is this randomly skewed texturized background here that you see on the mini mod dog. This is the simplest one to do of all the machine quilting patterns that I'm going to show you. This is also included in the mini mod dog pattern, so if you have this, it's on page 2 with diagrams. If you don't, just follow along and it'll be super easy for you to do. You should have already prepared your background with the batting fused to the background fabric, or you can safety pin it, and then you'll have to choose your thread. So here I've got my 6 favorite colors of Aurifil 12 weight thread. These are super chunky, super thick threads. I love to use them for this kind of skewed, slanty background kind of quilting. Or you can choose a variegated thread such as this, or this one from King Tut, or just a lovely solid color. Anything works, whatever you'd like to do, it'll look perfect. Once you've chosen your thread, the next thing to do is we're just going to start quilting by actually providing yourself with some drawn lines across the background fabric. And you can do this a couple different ways. You can use any of your markers that you might have, like a Frixion marker or a chalker or a water-soluble marker, anything that won't be non-permanent. I also like to use what I call a Hera marker, and this is available at your quilt shop. It's got this really kind of almost Sharpie kind of rounded end here, and what happens is you just drop your ruler anywhere on your background fabric at an angle, slant it, and then you draw the line, or you can use the Hera marker to crease the fabric without actually drawing any line or marking it, and it creates a little crease, if you can see that. And then you just skew your ruler a different angle and different way, and then go ahead, give it a nice mark, skew the ruler a different way as well, give it another mark, and now we're ready to take this over to our machine and do the first stitching line. If I'm switching colors with my Aurifil 12 weight, or if you're switching colors, what you'll want to do is draw about 3 lines first, stitch those in with one color, and then come back and draw another 3 lines, change color, and see how you do, and keep adding lines until you've filled in the whole background fabric. So let's do that. So I'm here at my machine, I'm ready to go. I've actually already threaded it up with the 12 weight thread. I'm going to start with the yellow color, but I do want to give you a little tip about using thicker threads, or even some of the thicker variegated threads. You're going to want to probably change your needle size up to a 90-14 quilting size needle, or even a 100/16 size needle. And those needles have a bigger eye to them to accommodate the thicker diameter in thread that you're using. So be sure to check your needle. If for any reason the thread starts to fray and break right at the needle, that's a sure sign that you need to switch your needle to a bigger size. Once you're ready to go, just go ahead and put your walking foot into your machine, or for instance, if you have an even feed system like I do on my Bernina here, just engage gauge it from the back. I like to increase my stitch size up to about 3, and you're ready to go. I always start with a little leader piece in there. You can see it right there where you stitch through the little piece of fabric first, and then that way you won't get any snaggled thread underneath or thread nest. Once you feel good, you just start with your first drawn line and you just stitch away. So there I've got my first 3 lines quilted in yellow, and you can see I actually have a crease here from somewhere, so I'm going to use that for my second round of lines that I'm going to quilt. So I've got 1 crease already going that way. I'm going to again plop my ruler down, draw or crease in some more lines, about 3 or 4. Make sure that they look random and they're all going in different directions. And I'm going to take this piece back to my machine and put in the orange thread and quilt those. And I'll just keep going and going until I actually fill in this background completely, or enough that I like it once I put my shape on it. So there you go. I'm pretty well done filling in my background fabric with my randomly skewed lines and straight stitching. So let's move on and I'll show you another pattern that you could do for your animal shapes. So the next machine quilting pattern that I'd like to show you that you can use in the background is this one that I have here called Curvaceous Quilting. It's really simple to do, there's no marking necessary, and you simply set your machine at a straight stitch again, and you can use a beautiful variegated thread or a solid colored thread, whatever you'd like. You can really see it happening here on the garden party sample that I've got on the cutting table, and you can see that the lines just undulate in and out of each other, and it runs from the top of the wall hanging to the bottom. You can also see it in the background of the mod fish I have over here, and this one actually runs diagonally. You'll see it running from the top over here down to the bottom on the other side. So you can do it in a diagonal format or just a straight vertical format. What you need to do to get started is, again, have your background fabric sandwiched in with your batting. This one is for my mod cat, so since I know I'm going to make a wall hanging out of my mod cat, I've actually put the backing fabric already on the back and sandwiched it between the batting and the background fabric. So now we'll move over to the machine and I'll show you how to get started doing curvaceous quilting. So I'm here at my machine, I'm ready to go. Just make sure again that you check your needle, make sure it's the right size for the thread you're using. And you can see I've got my background fabric here. I'm not going to mark it, I'm just going to go ahead and start stitching. And I'm just moving and undulating back and forth, very gentle curves, no sharp turns. It's just a very gentle curve like driving down an old country road. Once I complete that, I'm going to move over about 3 inches and start again. And the idea here is to kind of undulate inward and outward of the first line that you did. But anything goes. So I've done my initial stitching about 3 inches apart here, and you can see I've filled in the background fabric. Now I'm going to go back in and start stitching in between each of these lines. Sometimes I get really carried away and I might stitch 3 or 4 lines in between these lines. Sometimes I might just do 1. So however many you want to do and however dense you want to make your stitching in the background is entirely up to you. I'm going to get started and I'll check back in with you when I finish this up. So as you can see, I finished all my curvaceous quilting and I filled it in rather densely, but I rather like it like that. And now this is ready for my Mod Cat applique. I want to show you the backing fabric too, because I used a dark green backing fabric and that shows up the quilting really, really nicely. So now I'll move on and show you the final quilting pattern that you can use for your background. So the last quilting pattern I want to show you today, which you can see in the background of this mod tiki and also in the background of my mini mod dog, is this wonky chevron. And again, it's super easy to do. The way you start, you've got your backing fabric already sandwiched in, and you're just going to draw a wonky chevron. That's going to be the first initial line that you're going to follow. From there on, it's going to be just following the same line over and over. So you can see I've got my Frixion pen, and I'm just free-forming kind of a chevron here, or triangles that undulate across the background. Can you see that? That's going to be my first initial line that I'm going to stitch. So I'm going to go over to my machine and show you how to do that. So I'm at my machine and I'm ready to go. So I'm just going to start stitching right on the chevron line I drew. And this is going to be my first initial stitch. If I come off the line, it's okay. You can see I kind of came off the line there. That's okay. This is just going to be my marker of what I'm going to follow to fill in the rest of the quilt sandwich as I go through it. And there you go. I filled in my first line. Now I'm going to go back and echo that line and also improvise as I go through it. And what I mean by that is, let me just get rid of my leader here. What I mean by that is I'm just going to follow along probably about an inch away from where that first line is and follow the same pattern, but also improvise. I might go a little deeper here, and then as I turn up to come up above here, I might actually not go as far up. I might add in another chevron like so. And so you can just have fun making different shapes and patterns out of this original line that you drew.